The silence in the war room was deafening. 27 military officers stared at the digital map, watching their forces crumble in real time. 3 days into the simulation, and they were losing badly. That's when the cleaning cart squeaked into the room, pushed by a man they barely noticed for 15 years. What happened next would change everything they thought they knew about strategy, leadership, and the value of a quiet mind. This is a story about Harold Chen, a 68-year-old janitor at the Pacific Defense Training Center in San Diego. For 15 years, Harold had mopped the floors, emptied the trash bins, and wiped down the whiteboards in the military's most advanced tactical simulation rooms. He was invisible to most people there. Just a quiet man with kind eyes who always arrived before dawn and left after sunset. But Harold had a secret. While he cleaned, he watched. While officers debated and argued over strategies, Harold listened. And while they overlooked him, Harold understood something they didn't thought it was. October 2019, the annual Strategic Defense Simulation was underway. This wasn't just any war game. It was a billion-dollar exercise involving the brightest military minds from 3 allied nations. The scenario was complex. A coordinated attack on multiple fronts, limited resources, unpredictable enemy movements. The kind of chaos that felt all too real. Commander Sarah Mitchell led the coalition forces. She was brilliant, Harvard-educated, with 2 master's degrees and 15 years of field experience. Her team included colonels, majors, strategists who'd written books on modern warfare. They had data analysts, AI predictive models, and enough computing power to run 1,000 scenarios simultaneously, yet they were losing badly. Day 3 of the simulation, and enemy forces had captured 2 strategic positions, cut off supply lines, and were advancing on the main base. The stress in the war room was palpable. Voices were rising, tempers flaring. Someone knocked over a coffee cup. Another officer slammed his hand on the table. "We need to reinforce the eastern flank," Colonel Davis insisted. "No. We pull back and regroup at Firebase Delta." Major Rodriguez countered. Commander Mitchell rubbed her temples. They tried 12 different strategies. None worked. The enemy seemed to anticipate every move. At 11:47 p.m., Harold pushed his cleaning cart into the war room. The simulation had paused for a 15-minute break. Most officers had stepped out for coffee or fresh air. Only Commander Mitchell remained, staring at the massive digital map projected on the wall. She didn't notice Harold at first. He began his usual routine, emptying trash bins, his movements slow and methodical. Then he paused near the main display. "Excuse me, ma'am," Harold said softly. Commander Mitchell turned, surprised to see anyone there. "Yes?" Harold hesitated. In 15 years, he'd never spoken up, never offered an opinion. But tonight, something compelled him to break his silence. "I've been watching these simulations for a long time," he said, his voice gentle but steady. "May I show you something?" Mitchell's first instinct was to dismiss him. She had 3 advanced degrees. He pushed a mop. But exhaustion had stripped away her ego, and something in his calm demeanor intrigued her. "Go ahead," she said. Harold walked to the display and pointed to a single tank, unit positioned in Sector 7. It had been sitting idle for 6 hours, deemed too isolated to be useful. "This tank," Harold said, "if you move it here, along this ridge, it changes everything." He traced a path with his finger. It seemed insignificant, a minor repositioning of a minor unit. "That tank is too far from the action," Mitchell said, not unkindly. "That's what makes it valuable," Harold replied. "The enemy has been predicting your moves because you're thinking like officers. You're moving the important pieces, protecting the high-value assets, following doctrine. But sometimes the smallest, most overlooked piece is the one they're not watching." Something in his words struck a chord. Mitchell studied the map again. "That ridge," Harold continued, "gives line of sight to their supply convoy route. They've left it unguarded because they assume you wouldn't waste resources on such a peripheral position. But if that tank takes this position, you cut their logistics. And when armies can't eat, can't refuel, can't resupply, they don't fight well, no matter how brilliant their strategy. Commander Mitchell stared at this janitor who just articulated something her entire team had missed. She pulled out her tablet and ran the simulation with Harold's suggestion. The algorithm processed for 30 seconds. Then the projection shifted. With that single tank repositioned, enemy supply lines were exposed. Their advance stalled. Within the simulation's time frame, the coalition forces could regroup, resupply, and mount a counteroffensive. It wasn't guaranteed victory, but it was a fighting chance. When the officers returned from break, Mitchell implemented the change. She didn't tell them where the idea came from. Not at first dot. Over the next simulated 8 hours, the tide turned. The overlooked tank in the forgotten position became the linchpin of their entire strategy. By day 5, the coalition had regained lost ground. By day 7, they'd won the simulation. At the final debriefing, with generals and defense officials watching, Commander Mitchell did something unexpected. She asked Harold to join them in the war room. This man, she told the assembled officers and officials, saw what all of us miss. Not because he has more training, but because he has a different perspective. For 15 years, he's watched us work, listened to us think, and understood the patterns we couldn't see because we were too close to them. She turned to Harold. Tell them what you told me. About the forgotten pieces. Harold, uncomfortable with the attention, spoke simply. In chess, in war, in life, we focus on the queens and kings and forget about the pawns. But sometimes, it's the piece nobody's watching that changes the game. Not because it's powerful, but because it's underestimated. And sometimes the most valuable thing you can have isn't more information or more resources. It's a quiet mind that can see clearly. Harold Chen retired 6 months later. Commander Mitchell made sure he received a civilian commendation for his contribution. More importantly, the Pacific Defense Training Center now includes alternative perspective consultants in their simulation teams. People from different backgrounds, different experiences, different ways of seeing problems, because the truth Harold taught them that night goes beyond military strategy. In our own lives, we often overlook the simple solutions because we're too busy chasing the complex ones. We forget that sometimes the smallest change, the quietest voice, the most unexpected perspective is exactly what we need. If this story gave your soul some relief today, hit that like button. Share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever had someone unexpected change your perspective? And subscribe for more stories that remind us what really matters.